Hello. You can hear me?
Can you hear me?
I can. Can you?
Yes, I can.
Okay, perfect. How are you finally?
Yes, I'm doing fine. How are you doing?
I'm well. Is it too late over there? I'm so sorry.
No, it's only midnight. I'm up talking to Joe. I talked to Joe a lot later than this anyway.
Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I'm sorry for the delay. We had a few unexpected events happening, but now we're here.
Yeah, how's you guys doing?
Getting better, but it's gonna take like a week or two of slow recovery.
Okay, so you want to? So I'll kick this off because I know you said that you mostly wanted to just hear my point of view and where my mind was on it.
Yeah, I think maybe for me, again, what I'm really interested in, especially because I'm coming from a very different background, right? From a very different society as well. And as you probably already know, Europe, hunters have guns and some specific people have guns. And I think if we compare the crime rates, for example, they're much lower in the whole of overall Europe. Maybe correct me if I'm wrong if you have different stats. But I'm extremely interested, one, to understand why there is, and if you're going to use the constitution argument, then I cannot say anything, right? So I'm hoping that you can give me the logical reasoning behind why in the American society is more, you have this need more than in other jurisdictions, I guess. And then we can move to your more extreme topic, which is all citizens should have gun apart from the mentally ill, which I think it's a quite, strong sort of stance to take.
Okay, so I'll try to stay away from the Second Amendment a little bit, just so we don't have to use that. But I'll tell you my logic behind it. Okay, so last year, 2016, the U.S. had its most deadliest mass shooting in its history. It was on June 12th. A gunman walked into a gay nightclub. 50 people were killed and 53 people were wounded. December 2015, an armed couple killed 14 people in San Bernardino, California, a facility for mental disabilities. On June 16th, 2015, there was 5 dead and 3 wounded when a gunman opened fire on a military recruiting station. And the thing about all these killings, all of them are taking advantage of gun-free zones, because as much as America is the place where you're allowed to have guns, there are certain places where there are gun-free zones. The mass shootings and the killings, as you say, as I outlined, it happens in the club where there's security and people can't get in with guns, or a place where the mentally disabled are, that they have screening so other people can't have guns. Now, the rules and the laws we have, those work perfectly fine for the law-abiding citizens. However, the people that are not law-abiding citizens, they basically get a free walk and they're able to go in and do these mass shootings. So I would really increase the amount of areas where people are allowed to conceal carry, because there's a lot of stats, and I won't go into a whole lot of stats, but there are a lot of stats where people that are allowed to conceal carry, whenever there's some random gunman or something like that, they are able to take those gunmen down. So that's
so
basically
let me
the premise behind my argument right there.
So your point is that basically there is an increased rate of mass shootings, especially in the US, where we have this, where anyway we have the more free gun flow, I guess, and that's why you believe that by having more people
zones
carrying more guns, this would make people safer. Is that the premise, or am I interrupting it? Am I sort of interpreting it wrongly?
No, actually, you interpreted it just right. That's exactly what I said. Even though you kind of put a more negative spin on it, but yeah, that's pretty much
I guess
what it is.
a few things after that, and it's very interesting because we had a debate with this between the anti-feminist and Ben. It was like 2 or 3 months ago, exactly on the active shooting situation and if it's safer for more people to have guns or not. So I'm going to steal some of his arguments. First of all, I'm going to start of, why do in the US you have more mass shootings compared to other, again, jurisdictions, right? Like Australia or like Europe. The last time that I remember in Europe a mass shooting, it was in Norway quite a lot of years ago. And it was a really, really bad one. So the question there that I would ask first you is there a chance, and I'm not saying this is the reason, but is there a chance that the people who actually do these mass shootings have are empowered because it's easier to find these guns? So if someone is no law abiding or is not very well and he just wakes up one morning and he wants to kill people, if he doesn't have such easy access to guns, maybe the mass shootings would be decreased in the US. So that's the first question essentially, or thing to consider, right? And then let's move to the second premise, which is if people had more guns in active shooting situations, then there would be a better sort of outcome. And I mean, I'm struggling to believe that because imagine right now, I'm not going to talk about anyone else, me who have never touched a gun, carry a gun, me and another 100 people in a church or in a club, all of us having guns. What is going to happen? Do you think it's going to actually be more effective? You understand where I'm going with that? Or do you want me to further elaborate?
Oh, no. Oh, no. I understand. So dealing with question number 1 about the easy access to guns. Okay. So you can kind of say that it wraps up in you talked about Europe, for example. Now, Europe, for example, does not have the same free access to weapons that we have, which is true. But if you see the statistics and stuff like that, the crimes that they have, like if you just look at London, and remember you and I talked about London when it happened.
That was a terrorist attack,
they
right?
don't have the easy access to guns. However, with the terrorists, yes. Okay, let me use Germany, for example. And I can speak about Germany because I lived there for 10 years. Though they didn't have the gun crimes, they still, the criminals, they still just use other areas they use other weapons like knives and bats and stuff like that. So you can't really say that it's the gun. It's not the guns that are causing the crime. It's not that having a lot of access to guns are doing it. If a person wants to kill someone or do something, then they're going to find a way to do it. Which, like I said, in Europe, it's not exactly like Europe has a zero crime rate. It's just they don't have a gun crime rate. Their crimes come from other things.
Sorry.
And the second thing, which is when you.
But now you're moving from mass shootings to crime. So I'm happy to move to the crime, but let's close with the mass shootings one, if you want.
Okay. So, all right, going back to mass shootings. So in Europe, you don't have mass shootings. That is correct. But there are still mass other things. It's kind of hard to differentiate and divide, like, say, mass shootings from terror attacks, because to me, it's really the same thing. And so while the U.S. the guy is using a gun to go kill 50 people because he has a problem with homosexuals, then in Europe you have somebody like in Germany that's just going to plow through a whole bunch of people with a car. It's the outcome is the same. They're just using different techniques to do it. So I don't think that I don't think it's fair to say that it's the easy access to guns that is allowing the crime. And now when you spoke about the better outcome, because more people would have guns, that maybe this would happen. Now, I'll say this. Now, when I'm talking about people with guns, I'm not talking about just there's this negative stigma that I'm talking about, like this 60-year-old grandma, and we just giving her a machine gun and saying, hey, go to the mall, and then all of a sudden she's there and she's just like mowing down people. No, I'm not saying that. For the most part, Americans, especially those who have concealed carry licenses, they do go to classes and they do have training. It's kind of the same training that police force have, like in Louisiana where I am. In order for you to have a concealed carry license, you have to go to a course by I'm sorry, Daniel just wrote me, and I have to, man, I really don't like Daniel. No, I'm playing. I don't have a problem with Daniel, but okay, as I was saying, they are really trained people. So it's not just random people just having more guns. It is trained people, and it can be said that, speaking as somebody that's in the military that has dealt with guns a lot, I do understand the importance and the responsibility that I have with the gun. And so it is possible to say that there could be an incident, but that's only a could. There could be a whole lot of stuff that could happen. But for the most part, the people that I'm talking about, these concealed carry classes, these are trained people, not just people that are just using guns without training.
I'm interrupting or? Okay, so I'm just gonna go through.
No, go ahead.
One was again, you compared the mass shootings with people using a truck to attack people in Germany or in London or whatever. So purposely, these were still terrorist attacks, and they had nothing to do, with normal crimes, right? So that's again, I think it's a false equivalent in my opinion. So let's move away. I just feel that when you give someone a gun, even compared to a knife or even compared to a truck, the impact of his crime is going to be much severe. And that's why, for me, it's one of the reasons why I don't understand why, providing access to gun is beneficial overall, right? So let me move to the second premise that we talk about, that people who actually should have a gun are not everyone. So should not be grandmothers, should not be like mentally ill. However, in your topic, you just said mentally ill. So, it could be anyone, my grandfather or like my 15 years old a cousin or whatever it is. And you mentioned that these people go through thorough training. So I would love to understand, because I agree with you, if there is an extremely rigid process of training, of annual mental assessment and psychological assessment annually, right? Because people can flip, it's not like suddenly I just go through the process and then this lasts for the next 80 years. I would love to understand a little bit better. And the reason is because most of the mass shootings and most of the people who have actually done crimes have the permission to conceal carry. I don't know if I'm using the expression correctly here, to have a gun with them, and they went through this process. So it seems that the existing process doesn't seem to be as rigid as it used to be, or as it should be. So I'm not going to argue that people should not have guns, but for me, it seems that this process is not there. And if you ask me, it needs to be extremely rigid, because someone holding a gun, it's not a good thing. You know what I mean? It's like it can have a severe effect to the lives of a number of people, of a large number of people.
Okay, so what I want to do is I want to read the definition, and I had to get the definition of terrorism. That's only because we were talking about the terrorist attack versus mass shootings and stuff like that. So the definition of a terrorist act: the calculated use of violence or the threat of violence against civilians in order to attain goals that are political or religious or ideological in nature. This is done through intimidation or coercion or instilling fear, a surprise attack. So even the mass shootings, they still fall, to me, by this definition, they still fall under the umbrella of being a terrorist attack. Now, this is my suggestion, and this has a lot to do with some of the laws that they have in the U.S. right now. So there's this thing called reciprocity. Okay, for example, my driver's license in Louisiana, I can have a driver's license in Louisiana. If I drive to Mississippi or Arkansas or any other state, if I get pulled over by a policeman, my license is still good. And it's like that for most things. However, not for your gun license and not for your concealed carry license there. So my concealed carry license in Louisiana does not do anything for me. Once I cross the border, I have to take it off. The reason why I bring that up is because the way I think it should be almost the same way that a driver's license is done, as in it is something that's given and it's good in all 50 states, and it's something that has to be renewed. So I would say that let's just say, I'm just going to say 4 years. Let me write this down in case you try to use this against me later. But let's just say it's 4 years. And every 4 years, your concealed carry license has to be renewed. Part of that renewing process would be another mental examination, just to make sure that it's not all of a sudden this person hasn't flipped or hasn't clicked or anything like that. Like I said, but if you look at the percentage of the amount of people who have a gun license, the amount of people who have a concealed carry license versus the number of people who actually do mass shootings, the numbers are not even close. And a lot of people, even if concealed, this is, and I don't have the stats for this, and this is just a belief I have. If you were to open up and give full reciprocity and give full, and more people were allowed to have concealed carry licenses, and they went around through all 50 states, it still doesn't mean that every person would just all of a sudden, you know what, I can, so let me go buy a gun, because there's still going to be a lot of people who are nervous about carrying guns, and that being nervous
which
will
puts
keep
them
a
in
lot
its
of people
advantage,
from
right?
buying and owning guns. Like I said, the thing is,
I'm just saying, which puts this type of people, the more sort of,
I'm sorry, say that one more time.
Less violent or less comfortable with this type of like weapons, whatever it is, in a disadvantage. So when you allow all the population to carry guns, but I'm not comfortable with this means that I will always be in a disadvantage. Correct?
Yes, but it is your choice. I'll give you an example. Did you hear about the shooting when the American senator or congressman or whatever was shot in Washington, D.C.? Okay, so take that for example.
So this was the one where essentially there were a couple of guards, but I believe they reacted quickly. But obviously there was the shooting happened and there were a few people who were injured, correct?
Yes, that's the one. Well, the thing about that is, though they were in, I think it was Virginia where the shooting happened, and in Virginia they could have concealed carry licenses. None of the senators had any of those weapons because in Washington, D.C., because of D.C. and all the important stuff that's in D.C., they weren't allowed to have weapons there. And so you had basically the whole Republican Party, all the senators there at a softball field. Some crazy gunman had a gun, and and this is the funny thing, this guy, had he not been mentally ill and couldn't shoot, he had an AR-15 and opened up fire on congressmen and senators, and he only wounded one, but the senators, they were basically at his mercy, and that's the thing that I hate. And for a little bit, I'll hit on the Second Amendment, just a little bit. So the Second Amendment, the rights of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. And infringing and having these gun-free zones and having these areas and all these extra rules, when you have the Constitution, it says it shall not be infringed. There's no shall not be infringed unless you're in Washington, D.C., or unless you're over here, or unless you're over here. It shall not be infringed. And it puts the regular citizens at risk because they are left basically because criminals who want to commit a crime are always going to find a way to commit a crime. It's only the law-abiding citizens who are left at a disadvantage and are being kicked off repeatedly. At
So
all these...
look, one at a time, right? So for the Republican incident, two comments on that. One, I believe that especially this group of people, the politicians, they do have, and they are accompanied by trained guards. So there were people there with guns who were trained, and their actual job were, correct me if I'm wrong, that was my impression, that to protect this group of politicians, the Republicans who were playing this game. Is that correct or not? So
it's kind of sort of correct. So the way it is the key, the important key positions in Congress, like the Speaker of the House, the Minority Whip, the special people in Congress, they have guards. So out of the, let's say, 30 people that were there, only one person was special enough to have security. If that one person wasn't, if say that one person had not been there, there would have been no security there whatsoever. It's only because
so,
the way it's deemed.
Fair enough, but usually this type of specific people that you were referring to have some type of protections, right? The second thing that you mentioned is that what if these Republicans, or actually all of them were carrying a weapon? And I'm going to ask you right now, do you think that the outcome would be better or worse? Because I, as a citizen, might have been watching as another 10 people at that point in time, and you, as the group of Republicans, get your weapon out, right? Which most probably you would have on you while you were playing the game, and start shooting because you're getting panicked. So, which can be extremely dangerous. You understand the reasons when you are like in an open setup and you have 10 people or 50 people with guns, no one knows what's happening. Everyone is in a panic, and you can't even recognize who is the actual shooter because everyone has a gun, right? So I'm going to move now to your third premise, which is like, if someone wants to do harm, they will find a way to do harm. I agree with you. But if you create a culture that access to guns is easier, then the impact of these criminals is going to be much more compared if they can have access to a knife or to a car. And if you ask me, what do I feel more protected, right? If you tell me that everyone around me has a gun, or if you tell me that, you know what, police, I'm going to invest more in the police to be better trained, to be more on the streets. Also, people like you who have a history in the army, or who have a history of being like extremely trained to carry guns and to react in the right way in the situations, I'm going to trust you. But you think I'm going to trust the Republican who has spent and when I say Republican, I mean whoever politician or whoever average Joe, to actually carry a gun when I'm on the street? Would you? You know what I mean? I trust you. I trust the police. But like, imagine 50 people in this specific scenario that you described having guns, and you're just sitting there and waiting to see what's going to happen.
Okay, so now I could play this as a debate and just say 100% no, you're wrong, which would feed into the debate and probably affect the scoring. But I'll be honest with you. There are some people who I really do feel, I'd be nervous if they had a gun. I do, but that's where the training comes in, and just it's the same way. Listen. It is the same thing in the Army when you're deployed, and there are some people who have taken their training serious, and they take it serious, and they are real proficient at their job. And there are some people who you're like, hey, guy, hey, you need to go take your gun over there, way over there, which is true. However, you can't just you can't punish the minority. At least you can't punish the masses for the minority. There are those people that might be, but for the most part, these people are going through training. Like I said, anybody who's going and wants to own a gun, they take it serious, because I'll tell you that having a gun and being able to pull it out and possibly take somebody's life is something that is taken serious. And I can only speak for me when I say that and say that I take it serious, but we can't just assume that everybody's just going to be crazy. Like the senators, the senators, if they went through the proper training. And like I said, I am talking about that when you have your concealed carry license and when they are doing this recertification every 4 years, I'm talking about a serious, in the Army, we call it shoot, non-shoot training. It's the same thing if you've ever watched a police video where the one thing pops up and it's like a terrorist, and another thing pops up and it's an old lady holding a baby, and it's training to say to know that this split second that, okay, bam, I need to identify the target and stuff like that. And once again, I'll just say that I understand what I'm saying, and I understand the danger in what I'm saying of making guns more accessible, that there could be some kind of like crazy person, not crazy person. I'm sorry. No, I don't want to say mentally ill person, not a person like that, but a less trained person. But for the most part, but I believe that by having proper training and proper certification, like exactly the same way we do it in the military, that it would negate that, and it would drop this craziness down to a minimum.
Just to repeat, if I understand it correctly, what you're saying is that U.S. citizens should have the right to conceal carry, as long as there is a rigid process in place which is gonna guarantee that these people are, one, safe, sane, and properly trained. Is that correct? Okay, then I think that yes. we're on the same page. Yes. It's for me, it was more about everyone suddenly just giving it out there to the people. And even though personally, from my personal experience, I feel, and I've seen with my own eyes that investing in creating a culture and an attitude which is non-violent will have on the long term better net benefits. Yes, you will always have a 1% of bad apples, of course, but overall the net effect is going to be a benefit. But I cannot, your premise is right? And I agree with you, and it's part of your constitution, and it's everything right. My disagreement was mainly about giving the right to everyone, like just giving guns out there, which I just feel it's more dangerous, because your topic was extreme, and I know you didn't mean it in that way. But I also wanted to hear your thoughts overall, because my understanding is that for you guys, it creates a sense of safety, right? And it's a core basic human right, even if for the rest of the world, the situation is slightly different.
Yes, and I'll wrap it back around to the thing that I started out in the beginning with the mass shooting that happened in 2016. So in 2016, that one gunman killed 50 and wounded 53. And all right, I know this may sound, I don't want to sound that I don't appreciate life and that every life is not important, but that is 103 people. Say at least, let's say one person, like I said, I don't want to sound crazy when I say this, but even if you incorporate say it was a random shot and somebody did a random shot or something like that, you're still talking about there was one person that basically shot 103 people. 103 people. Had anybody else had a gun, that number would have been lower. It would have been lower, and that person would have been killed. Like I said, it's not that I'm just saying, just basically a truck pulls up in the neighborhood and just starts throwing out guns out of the back of the truck or anything like that. I'm saying that right now, the way the gun laws are and the way the guns is in the gun-free zones, the gun-free zones and stuff like that. Like, look at I brought up the recruiting station thing that happened in 2015. That was 3 recruiting stations full of trained American soldiers or Marines. And these soldiers and Marines were basically just picked off because they were in a gun-free zone and they weren't allowed to have guns. Yet criminals, they don't care about the rules as much. So they were able to just go there and just start picking off people. And that right there, the fear, I believe that fear is what keeps us and keeps trying to implement all these crazy gun laws on us.
It's unbelievable, right? I can't even comprehend how these things happen. Practically, though, I just find it a little bit like if you ask me tomorrow, right? Especially in the cases of a club or in the cases of a concert or in the cases of this type of entertainment venues. If you ask me, I was in New York a couple of months ago and I went like to see a Broadway show, right? And if you told me that in there could be 5 or 10 or 20 people with guns, right? And maybe one of them, like the guy in San Bernardino, had proper permission, but he was willing to kill us all, right? Would the other 10 or if the rest of us had guns save the situation or actually create the biggest massacre? Because practically, and you know that better, so please tell me, in this type of panic, right, where everyone has a gun, how do you even recognize who is the active shooter and who is the person who is trained? How can you tell? Or even for the police? No, because you've done this in a professional manner. So it's an honest question.
That is a good question right there. You know what to say? This is like your first public debate.
I'm not.
You are pretty good at this.
I'm really for me, and you'll see, and that's why I was very reluctant to do a debate, because I'm really looking for logical answers, and because I really want to understand where the other side is coming from, right? Because I understand we might have different backgrounds, we grew up in different societies, and that's fine up to an extent. But I do feel that all of us share a common sense of logic, or I want to believe that. And that's what I'm trying to get. That's only that. I'm not trying to challenge you in any way, right? But practically, I would like to understand how it would happen.
Okay, so really what happens is it's a matter of, and I'll say it like this, and it may sound a little uncallous and a little hard to say this, but usually you can tell by the direction people are running, and that's really the way it is. Like I said, I don't want to say uncallous and just. But really, in the situations where I've been in, where there have been, like, say, an active shooter and stuff like that, usually you can tell if I have a gun and I'm not in the immediate area where I can see where the shooter is. Usually, the crowd of people are running the opposite way. That will let me know which way the shooter is and stuff like that. That's usually the biggest indicator, and also that's. And that's where I'll give you an example. And I understand that I am a properly trained person, and I do understand that. One time in Iraq, we were doing a raid on somebody's house, and we were looking for this terrorist or whatever guy. And we went into this house, and a guy came around the corner in the hallway, and he came out with an AK-47 with a machine gun. However, he was holding it by the barrel. Me seeing, I was able to see. Well, I clicked and went to semi to shoot, but I saw the way he held the gun and saw that the way he was holding it was not a threat, that he was not trying to shoot me. He was just concerned about somebody coming into his house. And that's where I say the training comes into play at. It's when I am very, being a married man and a father and having kids, I'll tell you that, yes, it does worry me about untrained people having guns. And that's why I would say that I am really, really, really strict on the way that I think people who carry guns should be trained. And like I said, with these mass shootings, now there's some mass shootings like the crazy guy in like North Carolina who shot some old people at church. I'm not saying that all crime will be done away with or all mass shootings will be done away with, but it will be if anybody is there, even if you're just shooting bullets into the air, it will cause the gunman or the guy who's trying to do this mass shooting to at least think twice or hunker down or hide behind something, causing him to take more time, allowing the proper police and the properly trained people to be able to respond.
No, yeah, as I said, like I think it's like people like you. I wouldn't think twice, right? And I would even feel safer having someone like you around me or Joe who have gone through the process compared to a security guard, right?
Hey, not hey, Joe's watching this, not Joe. Like, don't trust Joe with guns. Don't trust Joe with guns.
There's no question, and I would trust you guys more compared again to a random security guard. It's just that I honestly don't think, and if there is a proper training in place, but I think whatever training is in place, it's still gonna be incomparable with the real thing that you guys went through, and you can deal with whatever it's gonna come at your way, and that's what personally would make me completely uncomfortable, right? Let alone. I understand the right to safety. I understand the right, to protect myself and to my family. But at the same time, I respect the life and, having even a criminal who is desperate and who wants to break into my house but has 0 guns. And just because I'm dangerous, just decide that for that moment, I'm going to be God and I'm going to kill him. Even that instance for me makes me uncomfortable, if you know what I mean. Like, I just feel that having a gun is a little bit like being God. Like you have the right to take human life in a much easier way compared to the other ways, right? But anyway, that's a personal opinion, and that's not something that necessarily I can support with solid arguments and statistics.
Yes, and I did have more statistics, and I just so you know, and I messed up with this when I was debating with Joe when I closed my notes out, but with you, I just closed my notes out, so don't attack me on statistics now. But I'll say there are statistics. There were 2 recent examples in Texas where one guy was trying to rob a lady, and another guy was trying to do. I forget what the crime was, but it was able to be stopped by 2 people that had concealed carry licenses. Now in Texas has like the most free concealed carry licenses. Basically, anybody with the gun can have one. But once again, you don't see those crazy.
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah. No. And absolutely. And I try to. I was just saying that Texas, my understanding, I've never been, so I don't know. But it sounds a little bit like the Far West, right? More like the movies that we used to watch on TV. But I don't know. So I've never been there. I don't have a personal opinion.
Yeah.
But the thing is that, before when you were telling me to wait for like 10 minutes, I was just like Googling. I didn't really want to find like extreme statistics and start reading, because for me, most of the times, I bring you a statistic, you will bring me another one, which because, it uses a different sample, it's going to contradict each other. So I also found statistics that, support the opposite, that having guns, it's not necessarily safer. And I'm sure you can find statistics we can support that it's much, much safer. What I can say, though, and correct me again if I'm wrong, but I remember watching this in the news, that Australia used to have a much looser gun control, sort of flow of guns. And a few years back, or maybe recently, they decided to stop the flow, and the crime rate went down. Again, maybe I'm wrong, but that's an impression that I have, and I thought it was interesting. And the second point is from a personal experience in Europe, that we really don't have such a high crime rate or so many deaths. Like, I was astonished when, I think it was the July 4th in Chicago, when like in literally one weekend, there were like more than 100 shootings. Like, you don't have 100 shootings in the whole of England in a year. It's scary. And I don't know if this is because, it's access to guns is more free, or it's because law enforcement is not that good, or if it's because more people should have guns. I just feel like it's something that needs to be reviewed much more holistically, rather than necessarily, let's increase our safety and provide more guns to the public. I don't know, what do you think?
That is a hard one, because Europe is so difficult. Like I told you, I went to Greece before, your home country, and I went to Greece at the time when probably the worst possible time to go on vacation to Greece, during they were having a lot of riots and stuff like that in Athens, and there were no gun shootings. However, hey, Greek
You
people
can't
have
imagine.
a pretty big temper when they but it was yeah. So it wasn't gun shootings, but it was something else. And like I said, it's with the landscape, the way with this terrorist attacks and stuff like that, there's no for sure answer on what could curb crime and what could bring crime down and stuff like that. Like, and I have to go back to Germany again. Germany, it's illegal to have a handgun. It's illegal for assault rifles, but you can have like a hunting rifle and like a hunting shotgun, like hunting long stuff that you basically just shoot 2 rounds and then you have to reload. Those things are illegal, and you don't hear about there's the crime is not there as far as.
Yeah, we have the same. So this is mostly to hunt like animals and birds. And maybe I remember in Greece you have like one incident every 10 years that the old man killed his neighbor because of a brawl, right? But these happen like once every 10 years, basically. It's funny, yeah, it's mostly funny. Anyway, it's a different society.
I believe that. I'm sorry, I don't mean to laugh at like a killing or. Yeah, and it is, but it's one of those when you look at. You remember? Did you bring up the New Year's Eve thing when? In New Year's Eve, and I'm not trying to blame it on immigrants or anything like that. That's a whole nother debate. But New Year's Eve, like 3 years ago in Germany, where they had the mass rapes or something like that, and it was like they said that the count was like 100 people raped or some craziness that in Germany on New Year's. Like I said, I think it was New Year's 3 years ago. I'll look this up next time we talk.
Was it in the Christmas market? Maybe.
Had one person had a. If had one person had a gun, no, the Christmas market was the person with the van that drove through and like killed a whole bunch of people. This was probably the year before that in Cologne. I'll look this up next time, but yeah, it's Europe, and I guess we could do a debate later on gun laws in Europe. I kind of understand the reason why Europe has the gun laws that it has, but I guess I'm one of those Americans that believe in the right to have guns. So I think some of it, I don't even know if I want to go down that road, but I believe some of it that it wouldn't be once you add guns, everything just turns into the wild west, like Texas, where we're talking about.
No, I'm sure. And again, we need to take into account the different sort of history of these places, the different society and the structures and attitudes and mentalities, even the political sort of influences, right? So I don't mean to to do this comparison. Just for me, it's interesting to see the differences. We have 10 seconds. So, Terence, I just want to thank you so much. You were the first one. Hopefully there will be more. Thank you.